Good afternoon, dear teacher. Thanks for accepting to be interviewed. The current interview is about differences in the use of the same language. It will not take more than 5 to 10 minutes. Can we start?
Of course, I appreciate the opportunity I have here to participate in this video. So go on.
Okay, mister. How can you differentiate language from dialect?
Language from dialect. Language is, when we talk about language, I guess we're talking specifically about the language indeed. We talk about, it could be French, it could be Spanish, it could be English. They are different language, okay? For example, English is spoken in Great Britain, in Australia, in the United States, and other parts of the world. And in all these parts, the English have the same rules, okay? But when we talk about dialect, we talk about something more personalized according to the place. For example, it's very well known that, for example, the English that is spoken in America, in the United States specifically, is not the same that is spoken in Great Britain. There are some words that change, especially pronunciation, and some other factors that are not the same.
Okay. How can you define morphology?
Morphology is, when we talk about morphology, it's about how the words are used in a specific language. I will give you a good case. For example, when we talk about in Spanish, we use the S always to indicate plural. You use carro. If you want to make it plural, you add an S and say carros. And you know now that from singular, now you're talking about more than one car. Okay. In English, happens something very curious. In English we use the S to indicate plural, but we use S too in the case of the third person of singular. For example, if I say she looks at me, I use the verb look and I add an S. Okay, but this rule say that when I talk in third person singular, I mean he, she, like this example, and it, I have to add an S at the end of the verb. But this S doesn't mean that it's plural, because as the example says, she is a singular, the sentence is still in singular, but yes, I'm using it as an S, but the morphology in this part of the language is different than in Spanish. Even when we use the S in English for plural, but in this specific case, it's different. So, in other languages, we can talk about Chinese, French, there are so much difference according to the use of the construction they use about the words according to the occasion.
Okay. How can you define syntax?
Syntax is about how the sentences are constructed, okay? When we talk about morphology, we speak about how we construct the specific word according to the circumstance. Now we can say the thing about how we use all the group of words in a sentence, how we put it together, okay? For example, in Spanish, I say el carro rojo, okay? The adjective in this case, rojo, that means in English will be red. We use it in order we use this after the subject. The carro is the subject, rojo is an adjective. In English, it will be the opposite. Okay, for example, red car. Okay, red, that is the adjective, and car, the subject at the beginning. So this is about some difference that we could find according to the language. I can say that each language is unique and has its own universe and how it's speaking, how they use the words, and how we construct the sentence in it. Has its own rules, even though each language has its own sounds. Because there are sounds like ñ that we only find in Spanish and we will never find in English, and all the sounds and vowels that we have in English, while in Spanish we only have 5, a, e, i, o, u.
Okay. What is the most common way in which dialects of a language vary? Pronunciation, spelling, sentence formation.
I guess maybe it's pronunciation, okay? Because spelling, okay, we can find differences in spelling, differences in pronunciation, but I guess the most common is in pronunciation. I couldn't say why, but it's very well known that according to the region, the people have a way to talk that is different than others. We could recognize, for example, so in Ecuador, we recognize someone when it comes from the costa that is not the same like the sierra. If we want to make it about countries, a Colombian doesn't speak Spanish as Ecuadorian, but the Spanish that speak Colombians are not pronounced in the same way. I guess there are some words that we can use varied meanings they use, but it's not so much. It's not so meaningful like the pronunciation. I guess, in my own opinion.
Can you provide an example of dialect variation based on the option you just chose?
Okay, for example, an example about pronunciation.
Mm-hmm.
For example, how the people speaking in Argentina are here in Ecuador. Okay, in Argentina have they use this way to talk that we call voceo. What I mean with this is we use tú. Hey, tú puedes ayudarme con eso. The Argentina will say, vos podés ayudarme. It's different. It's the same language, but in this case they use a different pronunciation, even though it's varied the way they construct the sentence for constantly the way they speak.
Okay. What is the most common reason for dialects to vary? Geographical location, economic status, educational status.